The Cruze sedan, which replaced the popular Lacetti in the Chevrolet lineup and debuted in Ukraine in 2009, is a nice, relatively simple and not very capricious car. Even despite a number of nuances, he left behind a strong position in the secondary market. The Chevrolet Cruze, the Lacetti's successor, was based on the same Opel platform on which the Astra J was built. The model became global, really massive and therefore as simple as possible for cars of this class, reliable low-cost engines, maintainable transmissions, simple and relatively reliable suspension, McPherson in front and semi-dependent at the back. In general, even if we don't count the traditional Opel features, the car turned out to be successful, which allowed it to become, if not a bestseller, then very, very popular in Ukraine. And some shortcomings, painted by the owners on the forums, as a result, could not outweigh the flattering reviews about driving performance, unpretentiousness and maintainability of the model. The metal of the outer body parts is quite thin and easily injured. However, this did not affect the durability of the paintwork. The paint is reluctantly kept only on the plastic parts of the body, and things are decent with corrosion even on cars of the first years of production. The 1.6-liter F16D3 unit was inherited from Lacetti, along with its shortcomings. To the long warm-up and endlessly leaking valve cover gasket, chronic failures of oxygen sensors and frequent replacement of ignition coils were added. However, if you change the timing belt preventively, every 60,000 km, the motor has a fair margin of safety, which allows you to run more than 200,000 km without overhaul. Slightly more modern 1.8 became famous for a revocable campaign about a weak fuel system. Many, smelling the smell of gasoline, immediately went to the service. But there were those who did not have time, and extinguished the fire in the engine compartment, which arose due to a leak. Which, of course, is rare. In general, the resource of motors depends on the condition of the piston. An increased appetite for oil usually signals an imminent repair after 200,000 km. Approximately at the same run, the insides of the blockhead also begin to act up. The 1.8 engine has better traction, it is more economical and easier to start cold, but in operation it is slightly more expensive than 1.6. The 1.4 engine with a timing chain drive and a turbine, appeared in recent years of production, is much more modern and more dynamic than aspirated. But you can't blame him for being unreliable either. There are no problems with a chain up to 100 to 120,000 km, as well as with a turbine. However, this does not prevent the motor from being much more demanding and more expensive to maintain. MCP repair is cheaper than for a machine. There are almost no weak points in the box, with the exception of the incontinence of the seals. There are complaints about weak grip. But the AKP has more serious problems. Some people, after 100,000 km, encountered jerks, twitches and other whims, which led to at least the replacement of the valve body and solenoid valves. However, spare parts are available, and the repair itself is relatively simple. Yes, and a restored automatic transmission can be bought for a reasonable price. However, the owners note the most troubles in the electrical part. Even a harmless failure of the trunk release button, if its contacts are shorted to ground, will drain the battery. To the same result, failures in the control unit for lighting and comfort systems lead. For example, spontaneous switching on of the dipped beam or glitches of the air conditioning system. Complaints about the suspension, at least. Chassis replacements don't seem premature or burdensome. Perhaps more often than usual, due to the chronic creaking of the pads and extraneous sounds, the brakes require attention. It is not famous for its reliability and appeared after the restyling of the year, due to moisture that got into the connector, the connection module often burns out. In a word, if a bright appearance and a modern interior are more important for you than technical troubles, the choice of Cruze is obvious. In addition, he has no contraindications for modifications. You can choose any. Problems with the automatic transmission begin with jerks, bumps and twitches. If you immediately deal with the valve body and replace the gas turbine engine blocking pads, there is a chance to do without a major overhaul. But most often the mechanical part of the automatic transmission is finished off with mileage, and then the repair becomes more expensive. Replacement of bushings and a solid part of the parts is needed. You can save the automatic transmission by preventing overheating, frequent oil changes, every 40,000 km, and moderate acceleration. In atmospheric engines, out of trouble, exhaust manifold cracking, a weak intake manifold, throttle contamination, and a low timing resource are often noted. The belt is advised to preventively change every 60,000 km. With the same interval, it is advised to adjust the valve clearances. With a turbo engine, there is a little more trouble, but it will not yield to a resource. And it is clearly stronger in traction and dynamics. The first 150,000 km can be dispensed with without serious investments in theory. However, by this time, you still have to change the front wheel bearings, ball bearings and, of course, the bushings and stabilizer struts. On pre-styling cars, due to extraneous sounds, the owners successfully changed the standard shock absorbers to something else. Most often, the Bilstein B6 is praised on the forums. After restyling, the problem with extraneous sounds was removed by the manufacturer. With resistance to corrosion, the body is alright. But sills and wheel arches suffer from sandblasting. The situation with fastening of bumpers is not important. Their distortion can be obtained from a light touch of a snowdrift with a bumper. Fasteners are weak. Many people remove plastic rivets from bumper reinforcements and install more reliable aluminum ones. On plastic parts, bumpers, mirrors, paint does not hold well. Sometimes the chrome starts to peel off. The wiring under the hood is afraid of water. It's not worth driving through puddles. Cartridges for headlight and fog lamps do not hold high power lamps. Power windows fly after trying to lower the frozen glass. Often motor sensors, ignition coils, relays are rented. And the brake pedal sensor can cause serious illumination on the dashboard.